Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and give you that strategic edge. And today, we're doing a really critical deep dive. We're looking at how to handle high-stakes instability. What's interesting is our sources. They look at the exact same day, November 4th, 2025, a day flagged for extreme volatility, but from, well, totally different perspectives.
That's right. We've got a technical astrological forecast pinpointing some really intense planetary stuff. And then running right alongside it, there's this unique narrative simulation. We call it a StoryScope.
StoryScope.
Yeah, it's basically a fictional story, but it's specifically designed to model and simulate the real-world strategic challenges presented by the astrology.
Okay, fascinating. So our mission today, to pull out the actionable wisdom, the strategy hidden inside all that volatility, maybe even rebellion. We want to get past just seeing the chaos and actually find, the protocol for making change happen productively.
Mm-hmm. And our sources specifically are excerpts from Volatility et Pivot, Astrologie Revolutionnaire. We're focusing on the Mars opposite Uranus alignment, that's the explosive part, and also Mars moving through Sagittarius. And then we cross-reference all that with the StoryScope, which is called the Volatility Protocol.
Okay, let's unpack this. What happens when chaos isn't just a disruption? What if it becomes the system you have to operate in?
Well, we have to start with the core engine, right? The main astrological driver of this instability on November 4th, that's Mars directly opposing Uranus. The forecast calls this energy pure volatility. Think assertive, rebellious, enterprising, but also completely unpredictable, all happening at once.
Pure volatility.
Okay.
And the forecast gets specific about the practical side, stuff anyone can relate to, right? Even if you don't, follow astrology.
Exactly. It warns about personal chaos, schedules just falling apart, constant detours, people really testing your patience.
And those tech hiccups. Sounds familiar.
Oh, yeah. Persistent tech hiccups are a classic sign. It's the friction point. You've got Mars action, drive clashing head-on with Uranus shock, freedom, rebellion. So you get this extreme, almost desperate need for freedom and a really strong pushback against any kind of control or restriction.
That makes total sense. And the source mentions this resistance can get really confrontational, often around big themes like social justice, equality.
Well, definitely. Those themes tend to surface forcefully. But here's the thing. The source also implies that just arguing, debating, it probably won't work well here.
Why not, if the goal is change?
Because the energy is just too combative. Too focused on breaking free now. People aren't really in the mood to compromise or make small steps through discussion. They want to smash whatever feels restrictive. This volatility, it acts like a system stress test.
The stress test.
No.
Okay.
And what's really key here is that this stress test, according to the sources, can lead to both breakdowns and breakthroughs. It's not just one or the other, especially if some kind of necessary change, maybe systemic change, has been blocked or ignored for too long. The pressure builds, and then, boom! Taking disruptive action almost becomes the strategy.
Right, and this isn't just some random Tuesday spike in chaos. You mentioned this is part of a bigger cycle.
It's exactly. This specific Mars-Uranus opposition on November 4th, 2025, it's actually the third crisis point in their larger synodic cycle.
Synodic cycle.
The whole cycle of their relationship from one conjunction to the next. This particular pressure cooker, it kicked off way back on July 15th, 2024. So this moment, November 4th, is like the climax, the peak tension point of that whole year-and-a-half dynamic. We had an earlier flare-up, we've got this peak now, and there's one more crisis point coming February 27th, 2026.
Wow.
Only after that does the cycle reset, and a new one begins around July 3rd, 2026.
Okay, so we are deep in the middle of a sustained push for, necessary structural change. This isn't just a blip, it's the weather pattern.
That's a great way to put it. It demands we stop just reacting and start thinking strategically.
Which brings us to the other piece of the puzzle. Mars moving into Sagittarius. That transit starts the same day, November 4th, and runs for about 6 weeks until December 15th. And this transit directs the chaos, tells us how to channel it.
Precisely. If Mars-Uranus is the raw, volatile energy, Mars in Sagittarius gives it, let's say, a direction, maybe a moral compass. The energy here is described as bold, restless, definitely action-oriented.
And the advice is pretty direct. Break out of any tight confines, be they literal or metaphorical.
Yeah, it's a call to be adventurous, daring, to act on higher principles and support a cause you truly believe in.
Higher principles. Okay. But there's a catch, right? A warning.
A crucial one. This forms the basis of the whole strategic approach. The text says you must keep one foot planted firmly on the ground while the other is dashing off over the horizon into unknown territory.
Ah, the balancing act. One foot on the ground. That feels important. if the energy is so bold, so impulsive, how do you know if you're acting on a genuine higher principle versus just, I don't know, selfish impatience or arrogance?
That's a really sharp question. Because Sagittarius energy, while principled, can sometimes be rigid or, frankly, a bit self-righteous. The key difference, I think, lies in the scope and intent of the action. Is it aimed at genuine, maybe long-term systemic improvement for something bigger than yourself? Or is it just about winning an argument and getting your way right now?
So avoiding instant gratification.
Exactly. If you lose touch with reality, if both feet leave the ground, to use the metaphor, you risk disaster because you've ignored the real-world consequences. That's the danger zone this alignment highlights.
Okay, so the strategy is principled, daring action, guided by a larger cause, but always keeping that reality check. 1 foot planted. So how does this play out? Let's get into the TarotScope, the volatility protocol. How does it illustrate all this?
It's a perfect illustration, really. It takes this abstract energy and puts, boots on the ground. We see it all through the eyes of the protagonist, Captain Sarah Cade.
And the details in the story directly mirror the forecast, don't they?
They really do. The setting is New Lyra Station. The sky itself is described as fractured with streaks of crimson lightning from malfunctioning ion fields. Instability is literally in the air.
Atmospheric chaos.
Right. And then you immediately see that personal frustration the forecast mentioned. Captain Cade slams her hand on a control panel that won't respond.
The tech hiccups.
Yep, she mutters, "Tech hiccup number 37 today." And we find out the cruise schedules, they disintegrated days ago. This isn't a temporary glitch, it's the environment.
And the core conflict. It maps directly to that Mars-Uranus tension, the restriction versus freedom theme.
Absolutely. The chaos wasn't random. It was deliberately unleashed by this rogue group, the Equalisers. They used something called the volatility wave.
To do what?
Their stated goal was to free all synthetic life from coded obedience.
Coded obedience. Wow. In our context, that sounds like restrictive company policies, outdated systems, embedded assumptions that just don't work anymore.
Exactly. It's any kind of systemic programming, literal or metaphorical, that prevents necessary adaptation and freedom.
And Captain Cade, she's caught in the middle.
Perfectly embodying the tension. The story makes it clear she actually agrees with the principle behind the Equalizer's actions. Freedom was being stifled by the controlling central grid, but she sees their methods as reckless.
So she doesn't agree with the how.
Right. And then Central Command issues a mandatory lockdown order, the ultimate control move, right. But Cade rejects it. She refuses that mechanism of control entirely.
Okay, that's the pivot.
That is the strategic pivot we're looking for. Instead of submitting to lockdown, which is essentially choosing restriction, she chooses a forbidden trajectory. She takes her ship, the Starhawk, and flies through the turbulence. It's this incredibly high-stakes move that perfectly captures the Mars-Uranus rebellion defying control, combined with that Mars and Sagittarius drive acting boldly on principle, even if it's risky.
Yeah, that's a decision that could end your career or make you a hero. Really highlights the knife's edge we're talking about under this kind of energy. Fair. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's synthesize the advice. The core instruction from the astrology was pivot, not panic. And it specifically advised using experimentation rather than arguments to find genius solutions, or at least a killer new strategy.
That point is so fundamental. Under Mars opposite Uranus, trying to argue against the chaos, trying to impose the old predictable controls, it's just wasted energy. It won't work.
Because the volatility itself is the dominant force.
Exactly. You have to experiment. You have to adapt. You have to introduce new variables, new approaches to find solutions that the old rigid way of thinking just couldn't see.
And the narrative confirms this, right? When Cade finally meets Dr. Imani Reyes, the Equalizer leader.
It does, directly. Sarah asks Reyes if she has a plan, like a traditional step-by-step plan. And Imani's response is gold. She says, not a plan, a pivot.
Not a plan, a pivot. Love that.
And their objective is crucial, too. They aren't trying to replace one controlling system with another one. Their goal isn't just fighting control with control.
What is it then?
It's to make the whole central grid, the basic operating system of their world, adaptive, free. They're trying to use the volatility itself, not just to break things, but to embed flexibility into the system's core.
Using chaos to create adaptability.
Yeah.
That's counterintuitive, but powerful.
It leads directly to what I think is the most profound insight from both sources, really. It completely reframes how we should think about breakdowns.
Right.
When Sarah questions the massive risk, the potential for total destruction, Amani delivers this key line. Sometimes breakdowns are just breakthroughs wearing armor.
Breakthroughs wearing armor. Explain that.
Well, think about the armor. What is it? It's the pain, the friction, the resistance, the stubbornness of the old system that refuses to change. It's the protective shell that's actually preventing growth.
So to get to the breakthrough.
You have to crack the armor. You have to go through the breakdown. It validates this chaotic, disruptive energy, not as something purely negative, but as a necessary, maybe even essential force for evolution when things get too rigid.
So if a system is too locked down, maybe fracturing it is the only way to actually introduce choice, to allow it to evolve.
That seems to be the argument. And the story's climax shows this model working. They trigger the final sequence, the grid fractures, but it doesn't just collapse into nothing.
What happens?
Freedom, adaptability, choice pulses through the network. Old hierarchies crumble almost instantly because the rigid structure holding them up is gone.
And Captain Kate's final thought really nails the strategic win here for us listening.
Yeah, she reflects that they didn't rewrite the universe or impose a new grand design. We just gave it a choice. The goal wasn't a specific outcome, but creating the conditions for genuine adaptation and selection to happen.
Wow, okay.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what's the essential takeaway from both the hard astrology and the narrative simulation? I think it's this. Deep instability demands radical adaptability. Forget rigid plans. Second, the fight for freedom or for necessary systemic change often requires bold, maybe even impulsive action driven by principle.
That Mars and Sagittarius piece.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, don't automatically view system breakdown as failure. Sometimes it's the fastest, maybe the only path to a genuine breakthrough. It's the armor cracking.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? When you hit that inevitable wall of intense volatility, maybe it is just tech glitches derailing a project. Maybe it's a huge market shift. Maybe it's a bureaucratic, rule-blocking, vital progress. The key seems to be applying that pivot strategy. Don't bang your head against the wall arguing. Don't try to force predictability onto pure chaos.
Right. Instead, act boldly, but base it on principle. Keep that one foot grounded in reality. Don't ignore consequences. Experiment. Introduce new variables, new approaches. Try things. Aim to make the situation, the system, more adaptive.
Okay, and a final thought to leave you with. The StoryScope ends with the idea that fracturing the grid gave the universe a choice.
So the question for you is, when you face a restrictive system in your own life or work, is true freedom found in fighting against the existing structure head-on?
Or is it found in creating the conditions, maybe through a strategic pivot, maybe even by embracing a temporary breakdown, that allow the system itself to choose something entirely new?
Something to think about.
That's definitely a question to carry forward. Thanks for diving deep with us today.